Okay, now we're going to hear about human-centric innovation and digital co-creation, as you can already guess. And we have the great honor to hear more about this from Dr. Josef Reger. He's actually a good friend of Finland. He's been here several times. And for some strange reason, maybe he tells more about this Jyväskylä, the Athens of the North, as we say in Finland. Dr. Reger already went like, but he can tell more about this. So Jyväskylä area is very familiar to him, and he's been studying in Norway, so we know the Nordics are sort of something that is not at all that exotic for him. Josef Reger is CTO for Fujitsu's Europe, Middle East, India and Africa region, as well the chair of fellows for the Fujitsu's Distinguished Engineers Scheme, steering the direction of Fujitsu's best technical minds. And his current focus is on the IoT, Industry 4.0, digital transformation and machine learning, artificial intelligence. And he is recognized for his ability to understand and predict the IT trends, a great sort of technological visionary, all the trends that will have the biggest impact on the future of business. And I know because I got the honor of interviewing him last autumn at the Nordic Business Forum, so I know what I'm talking about. Dr. Josef Reger, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is that one?
So the story with Jyväskylä, you wouldn't believe that's because I'm doing martial arts, a Korean martial art called Taekwondo, and the Grandmaster has a system in which people from every country are involved, and the guy who runs the school where I'm going to, he is not from Finland, he was born in Germany, but his mother is from Jyväskylä. So we were going a number of times to this place called Alkio-Opisto, which is not far from Jyväskylä, and the summer camp was always around midsummer, because that's a sort of an interesting experience for non-Finns. If you come to this country and see what you are capable of doing over midsummer night, that's quite impressive. So I know this, and I discovered Lapin Kulta in the Minimar last night, so that's about it. I don't know whether that qualifies me to talk to you here in Finland about digital co-creation. I hope it does. This digital co-creation is the methodology of Fujitsu to attack and tackle the big problems that you are in all likelihood facing in the next couple of years in terms of disruptive innovation. Frankly, digital co-creation is not a methodology that helps you to do continuous process improvement. I'm not trying to belittle it. That is an important thing to do, but you don't necessarily need co-creation for it. Co-creation is a methodology that helps you and helps us to do disruptive innovation in your business so that you can be part of the digital transformation that's going through all industries as we speak. The quintessence of digital co-creation is that we work together. So I like to put it in these simple terms. We cannot co-create for you. That doesn't work. You and us need to co-create together. We need to sit down together, dream big dreams, and ask what the disruption is going to hit your industry, think about it, and then see what the digital technologies, all of them, IoT, machine learning, the sensors, the big data analysis, and the cloud applications, the security implications, and so on, how these technologies can help to solve the problem and maybe help you to reinvent your business. It's very collaborative. We need to do it together, and the results are not guaranteed. However, what we see in our track record, that it's actually very worthwhile doing it, and the barriers of entry are not that large at all. But again, the key thing about it is dream big. And so here's my first question of you. As we explained, you have clickers. Some of you have clickers. Please use them. The rest of you who don't have clickers, just respond mentally. And we have sensors in the room that are going to read your brain waves, and we will feed it onto the screen as well. So here are some big questions for you. Dream everything is possible. If you could have superpowers for you from some powers that be, what would you want? Would you want to have always make the best decision, or have a total transparency and X-ray vision of everything in your organization for disruptive innovation, or directly read your customers' minds? Or would you like to enjoy immunity to risks and threats, in particular in the security and cybersecurity space? Or would you just settle for the simple ability to see into the future? So please take the clickers and respond, and do it now. Thank you. Oh, very nice. Incredible. You don't need to know anything about your company? That's a surprising result. And it's amazing how these results vary from country to country. I do some of these Fujitsu World Tours, and 2.8% on X-ray vision for everything in your organization, as if Finland did not have any manufacturing industry. If you are in manufacturing, you will know that that's a bad thing. So I'm going to show you how you should maybe reconsider that one. And I like to see into the future part. I'd like to do that too. So if you think this is a joke, as we progress, I will use somewhat different phrases for all these, and we will be touching upon all of them. The key thing is that this is about disruption. This is about big dreams, where industries are disrupted or transformed to the level that it's very difficult to recognize them again. So before we get into the main directions that Fujitsu is working on currently with our technologies, let's just see a very recent example of what we are doing in the San Carlos Hospital in Spain, because that has the potential to change the face of the medical industry, or the business of well-being and healthcare. It is, in fact, a business. Healthcare is something that European nations spend on average 10 to 12% of the GDP on, and I'm sure Finland is no exception. Japan is 13%, and the United States is 17% of GDP spent on healthcare. There's a particular area in healthcare where the normal ways of working are just not fast enough and too expensive. And that's got to do with mental disorders, and in particular with the development of depression. It turns out that 1 out of 15 people suffer from temporary depression. That's not permanent, temporary depression, and we don't know what happens after that. So it's a kind of a dangerous situation because it can develop either way. 1 out of 15. And 4 out of 15 people develop mental disorders and behaviors such as substance abuse, in particular alcohol abuse, and other kinds of mental disorder. And the problem with these are that they are the major source of reasons for suicide. So something like 90% of all suicides are committed because of some sort of mental disorder that has developed and has never been treated properly. And one major part of that is, of course, alcohol abuse, in particular in Western Europe. Probably something like 800,000 to 1 million people per year commit suicide. So that's maybe a problem with the magnitude worth looking at. Now, in the San Carlos Hospital, there's a team of physicians, 8 of them, who look at these cases, study the clinical records, and try to figure out whether somebody is in danger or committing suicide or developing serious types of mental disorders, and look at the records and analyze, do the interviews, and try to figure out what kind of perils and dangers are we talking in that particular clinical case. That's one way of doing it. Now, the total disruption in that business or in that area comes if you apply data analysis and machine learning techniques or artificial intelligence in a more general way, knowledge management and that kind of thing. If you apply that to those medical records, of which there are quite a number of them, so in this case, the system went through like 36,000 records and looked at the total history, all the clinical records, examinations, numbers, and so on. And that was fed into the system with the aid of the physicians, of course, the doctors who know what they're talking about. And the system started to do big data type of analysis, correlations, meshing of data, and looking for reasons and building models and applying machine learning so that this progress becomes accelerated and more accurate. And indeed, what they arrive at, that's currently what we can do in that project, is a 95% accuracy as measured against the team of 8 doctors. Of course, where the system is already way better than the doctors are is the speed. Because this takes like, I don't know, in a new case now, sub 1 minute, 15 seconds or something. Oh, the preparation phase took longer, but that is the learning phase. That's always longer. And that's not relevant for the applications later on. So it's much quicker now. It's not much better, but it will become better because it learns as we go, and there will be more data trained. And with that, it is disrupting the way this sort of healthcare is being done, as the entire area of healthcare is being disrupted these days with new methods and applications of digital technologies. And if you don't think, again, that this is a business, this is a big business, because if it's 12% of the GDP, like probably in your country, then just a saving of 20% of that, and I don't think there's any doubt that we could do 20% if we went in with digital technologies for all areas of medicine and healthcare, then you end up with 2% of the GDP, and that's a very substantial money. If you don't think it is, ask to anyone talk to anyone in the Finnish government whether they would like to have an additional 2% for their spendings, and I think you will find people who are interested. So this is disruptive. This is changing the entire face of the medicine over time, and it is. And don't be afraid of this development, because this is the most part of it is diagnosis. There will be suggestions for treatment as well, but recognizing issues are already much better done by sort of artificial intelligence, machine learning systems. A lot of cancer diagnosis happens now with the aid of these algorithms, and they are arguably becoming better than human experts. That this is a clear disruption in the big medicine. Now, here's my second question. Do you think that your business is going to be disrupted like that? Because the disruption was very clear. The job of a doctor will be different, very different. And the key skills that you need to treat mental disorders, and in particular depression, are very clearly changing, and the skills required are very clearly changing. Disruption. Do you think that your business, whatever it is going to be disrupted? On a scale of 1 to 5, totally unrecognizable it will become? Nothing will change at all. Gauge yourself on that scale, please, now. Okay, that's interesting too. Well, I'm happy that only a few think that it will not change at all. I have a short message for those people. You're wrong. To the others, 3.5%, it will become unrecognizable. You are right, but you are too few. You need to be more, and you need to work in your company to convince everybody that it's going to be more dramatic than it looks like. It looks like, yeah, in some specific areas, more than half of you. This is true, but this is not not dramatic enough to me. It will be disruption will be higher. And let me then walk quickly through you through a number of examples where you see how this digital disruption will come by. Let's take the area, say, of industrial production, and Finland is a very good example for that because there's a lot of interest in Finnish companies. We know that because we have a huge effort going on in the area of IoT, Internet of Things, in the industrial version, industrial IoT, or as the Germans made up word for it, Industry 4.0, the fourth industry revolution, as it is called there. It's becoming a big movement now of the whole country. Japan is joining in, and Finland is expressing very clear interest. We are talking to a number of the companies in Finland, and our own organization is linking up with the German parts of the company, and so very clearly there is interest here, and so it should be. So if we are we have conducted a survey where we asked the business leaders across Europe, across industries too, what do they think, how bad it is going to be? Essentially the same questions, not put in the same form as you responded to. And they were a bit more gung-ho about this than you were, because they were saying 75% of them said that there will be fundamental change in their business. And about half of them said that they think that the current organizational structure will have to be changed because it's not optimal for that future environment. But only 7%, which is again very small, see themselves leading the digital transformation. Now, let me tell you where I am on this scale. I'm with the 75%. I think that there will be fundamental change. I'm with the 52% too. That's not the part of that. That's an independent question, so this is big. I think that the organizations as we know them will not exist. My small organization, I run a small organization, essentially analysts and people who try to understand technology trends and analyze the future. That will probably stay, but everything around us will probably change. But I'm also with the 7%. Fujitsu as a company, given the technology heritage, the service go-to-market model, the digital co-creation methodology to introduce disruptive innovation and change into the market, and given our good customers like yourself, is in the position to be one of the leaders of the digital transformation. So I am even with the 7% of that. And let's see a few quick examples how this could work. It will go along the dimensions of asking this: what are the critical areas? And the critical areas are intelligence. This is machine intelligence, not necessarily human intelligence, but human intelligence helps too. Then the connectivity changes of the nature of the business. Connectivity is important because with the connectivity, or hyperconnectivity as we called it 2 years ago, what you get is structures that support the transformation, digital transformation in a way that you can scale by using APIs, move to the cloud implementation model very quickly. That gives you scalability, agility, rapid deployment capabilities. So the crucial question will be how innovative you are, not whether you can implement it or not, because with these technologies there will be always companies such as Fujitsu who would be implementing it for you. But with that connectivity, it's very easy to scale your solution if we together find one. And the third is everything will be viewed from the customer's viewpoint. The digital transformation in many areas puts the customer into focus, such as this medical example I was using puts the customer into focus. It is really helping very much the people who suffer from mental disorders or are distressed or have a propensity to depression. And this customer viewpoint is almost in every business, because in every business value chain, there is an endpoint and there's a customer using it, even if it's not a consumer, and therefore this viewpoint helps us to understand as we move. Now, before we move, there's another question here. Please respond. How engaged is your particular organization in digital is the question. Going from the scale, not engaged at all, we are not doing anything, and going down to number 5, which is we are already fully digital, don't you worry. Please, I'm trying to influence you. I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. Please respond now. Okay. Well, you keep surprising me, actually, so I'll freely admit it. So not engaged in digital, 2 percentage points. We are not quite 1,000 people in the room. That's maybe, well, that's almost 15 people. Maybe they're not quite awake yet. So fully digital, 11, I don't believe that. You shouldn't believe it either. But that you are already doing some useful work, that's really good. And the ones who plan and running proof of concepts are doing the right thing for sure. And if you haven't found ample help for that, please talk to us, because in particular in the proof of concept stage, digital co-creation is the method that can help you tremendously to at least scale the problem, gauge the problem, and size the problem, that you know how much money you would be spending. Now, I'll tell you one thing, that if you are in manufacturing, which will be my next example, if you're in manufacturing, this picture is not good enough because there needs to be more proof of concepts. It's okay if half of the companies are already working it. Fully digital, nobody is fully digital, because manufacturing is actually a very analog industry, even though they are automated, and the industrial revolutions were essentially about their development. But nobody is fully digital yet, so we don't need to compete for that. We just need to balance these two, number 3 and number 4. Let's quickly do that. And excuse me. Thank you. Right. So let's talk about the applications of the Internet of Things, technologies, methodologies, and solutions in manufacturing. I'm going to tell you only 3 areas that need to be watched. The first one is availability of the manufacturing equipment and the factory and the assembly line. And it starts with the very simple statement of the car industry. In the car industry, a minute downtime is worth about 25,000 euro. So if there's an unplanned downtime, the clock is ticking and it's getting expensive. So about a month ago, in one of the it was in the newspaper, so I can say in one of the BMW plants, 2 young folks were having a bit of a good time. Substances were in play, and they had a little bit of a party, and therefore production line stopped. The security mechanisms kicked in for 40-some minutes. That adds up, do the math, to about 800,000 euro loss to the company, and that is really not funny for anyone. Now, you get about the same amount of trouble because there are unscheduled downtimes, and the average number of them is 5% of the total time, and therefore every day the car industry is suffering in the order of magnitude about €1 million because of unplanned downtimes. So predictive analysis and preemptive maintenance, or the other way around with the adjectives, are a very important discipline. There are enough sensors now, and there's enough compute equipment, and there is enough communication so that we can actually prevent a big part of that. The second area where manufacturing like this, of the serious type, has an issue, and that's quality. And the problem is that if there is any glitch in quality, the way with the productivity these factories work, there will be a very high number of products, even in the car industry, that are affected. A recall is a very expensive exercise. Most expensive recall of all times happened in the last few years, where a Japanese company, Takata, had to recall airbags that cost them about $24 billion US because of quality. Now, quality issues, the recognition that something is happening, and an immediate action to correct it in an automatic way is totally doable with today's available technologies. Here is how it is done. That's an example. That's actually, interestingly, a Chinese company, the NASA Group. They do electronics manufacturing for the most part, the state-owned company, and they're part of a big campaign to create virtual or smart factories in Japan. Don't you believe for in China? Don't you believe for a second that Chinese factories, the only thing they do is they employ cheap labor and they do mechanical, manual stuff, and that's it? No, they are on a level very comparable to manufacturing anywhere in the world, including Western Europe. And we do work with them, in particular with this company, in an IoT, Internet of Things application for industrial production in a factory. And the way to do that was to create a virtual image of the company. Some people call that a digital twin that you can run in the computer. And in particular, you can use the sensor equipment that's around to have a dashboard type of view of what's going on various levels of zooming capability, and you can have a view of the whole operation with all the operational numbers that you require, and where there is a very clear indication that there's a problem in any one point in time. That problem can immediately tell you how big the problem is going to be in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, in an hour from now, so you know how quickly you have to act, and it will also do analysis telling you that what was the root cause of the problem and how to prevent it next time. Going back to the fact that you might actually have to change the manufacturing setup for that, you can do that while the manufacturing is going on in the physical factory. You can do the simulation, what the changes would incur in the virtual factory in the computer using the smart manufacturing capability. That application brought in an increase of productivity by 25%. And this doesn't say so, but I'm telling you that we, of course, looked at the supply chain management, parts management, inventory management at the same time. All the data is available, essentially, now. And with that, one can do another 30% maybe. So tremendous savings are possible if one combines a number of abilities. Here, the abilities that are combined are sensor information for all parts, the parts that are being used for the manufacturing process, and the machinery that is being run for it, plus the suppliers and the history of supply, the routes, the normal information that they bring with them because they are identified using identity tags. So that brought into the physical and into the virtual instance of the company. The physical is being watched with the dashboard. That Fujitsu product is available now in Europe, and there is a great interest with manufacturing companies, and it's aptly called Dashboard, and that product does that for you, and then there is the analysis, and it can be turned with later on. That was not done here with machine learning into a predictive and preemptive style. This predictive and preemptive style depends on the applications of, and I know these are big words, artificial intelligence, or at least machine learning. I like to make that small difference, even though I have to say that non-learning artificial intelligence parts are very interesting too. We don't have time today to do a detailed description and analysis of what artificial intelligence can do and how it works, but I'd just like to say this much. Even if you object to the usage of these big words and say there is actually no artificial intelligence currently, I would even probably, at least for the argument's sake, accept that, and we could still have a very intelligent discussion about how machine learning, and there is no doubt that we can build machines, and machines meaning software systems, that we can build software systems that are capable of learning so that you do not have to program them from every eventuality. ability. That's the key thing here, that if you want to teach a system of how to do a complex task, you can either specify all the rules that are possible, which makes it a humongous complex task to program, or you create an algorithm and a system that actually learns that. And it can learn that by training, or it can learn by looking at historical data. Some people liked to say, and I was smiling when I was reading that in the newspapers, that it's like if you want to teach a computer how to cross a busy road, you could set up some rules, hundreds of rules, what to watch for and how to decide it and so on. Or you could just simply let it try. Yeah. Well, you don't have to let it try. You can just feed some video footage material from the busy intersections and roads in a big city, and let the system watch what happens if something happens, and how to avoid that. So you don't need to crash your computer for it to learn how to do this right. With that ability of looking at historical data and material and do simulations in parallel to that, you can use this artificial intelligence, or at least the machine learning part of it, for very good reasons. And there is more machine learning around us already than you would think. I mean, you see the recommendations you are getting on the online shopping sites. You see how certain higher class appliances at home, set-top boxes, are reacting to your habits. You see how online banking has become smarter and is making more and better suggestions for you. What you don't see, that they are rating your credit as well, and that it's a very big help for the financial institutes. A big part of the insurance industry is already using these techniques to catch fraud and attempts to claim insurance money. And what the common thing is, and I understand this is only a part of the big discipline of computer science called artificial intelligence. It's a smaller part of it in machine learning, and it's an even smaller part, even though the dominant part these days is the neural network applications to it. And the neural network applications are trying to mimic the human brain, mimic on a much, much smaller scale. We have about 100 billion neurons, and that's not even a big number, because every neuron of them have about 1,000 connections to other neurons. So we have 100 trillion connections in our brains. Now that's a big number. And that we cannot put in a meaningful fashion into a computer and run simulations with it. But it turns out it's not needed, because surprisingly small systems, just with the number, a couple of hundred neurons and a couple of dozen, in some cases 100 layers, can do recognition stuff, as we have proven, for example, with Chinese character recognition, where we are doing now much better success rates than the human experts can do, and in other instances as well. And much of this you don't see yet, because the corporations and the companies are using it for their own competitive differentiation, therefore don't like to talk about it. What you hear about is the DeepMind, who plays Go, and the other program, what Libratus, who plays poker, and that because these companies are trying to sell the software that they produce, and therefore they talk about it all the time. My view currently is that the industrial, healthcare, and other applications of machine learning and sort of quote-unquote artificial intelligence are more important, more relevant for our future, and you don't hear much about it. So the invisible part is the one that's more important. And with deep learning, and that's the ability of neural networks to have several layers in them, some of them specialized for certain tasks, and if you put that together into a deep learning method, what you find is we can do amazing things. Near real-time recognition of vehicles in a moving traffic situation in a busy city, or people recognition, so that the city surveillance can say that I would like to find the guy on a skateboard wearing shorts and so on in the city. I don't know we would be interested in that, but if that was the question, we could do that, and I mentioned handwriting recognition. The key takeaway is that there's been an enormous progress in using machine learning and automation as a result of that, and there is more than meets the eye, and there is no business where this could not lead to much better results. It can even be used for things that are not necessarily the same structure that we teach the system something. It can be used in instances where we don't know what to expect, and therefore we cannot teach the system to take countermeasures of any kind. But we know, and we can maybe train the system to know what's normal behavior. Now that application is cybersecurity very clearly, because what happens there is that you want to catch the first-time attacks right away as they emerge. At that point, there is no data, there is no experience, there is no training material, and you have no time, because the first cut is the deepest, and therefore you've got to catch them as they emerge. For that, you've got to train the system to know what normal is. And this is an anomaly detection cybersecurity routine that we do, and the key to its application is to transform the problem into a representation that the system can learn quicker. The physical world around us is such that we see, we hear, we find shapes, and we associate. That's not always the best representation. That's arguably the best representation for a human, but not for a machine. And so Fujitsu and Fujitsu Laboratories are working on techniques that take any problem and try to find representations of it, some graphical, sometimes graph theory, that's different from graphical, representations of it. And in that space into which we transform the problem, in that space there is an obvious or less obvious, the machines will still find it, way of catching it. And with that, we can deal with supply chain issues, with fintech issues, social networks, drug discovery, biology, all topics that I don't have time for. So, however, I would like to point out that most of this stuff runs on a kind of cloud environment. And Finland is one of those countries that has the Fujitsu Cloud K5 up and running, and has been running since February, I believe. And with that, Finland is the second European country, the first one was the United Kingdom, to get the Fujitsu Cloud K5 up and running. Germany has followed, Spain is the next. So you were ahead of Germany, if that says anything to you. You can be proud of it as a country that you have now an industrial strength cloud environment, and that lets you scale, lets you be agile, and it's different in many ways from the very commercial offerings of other vendors in the market. Cloud and hybrid IT are very important. The hybrid IT part of it comes in if you think about the instances where you actually wouldn't want your customers' data be available in the public cloud. Everybody will tell you that public clouds are safe, don't you worry, there are hardware and software technologies to separate instances and provide the protection, and still there are industries who would say, nope, my data or my customers' data are going to stay on-premise and are going to stay in my own data center. In that case, what you need is a hybrid IT setup that uses the cloud whenever it makes sense, and it uses your own setup, be that in your data center or in Fujitsu's data center, dedicated to you, run in a separated environment for you. Fujitsu is offering services to do that. Now, I'm seeing that my time is getting short, but there's an example that I like to do here in Finland and see how much I get beaten up for it, because I do this in other countries, and all other countries are admiring Finland for this example. Excuse me, next slide, please. Thank you. Now, this must say something to you. In all other countries, it doesn't say anything because they don't know the S group or ABC petrol stations. I actually used one of those up on my way to Jyväskylä, as I told, except the way I used it was very traditional. meaning I walked in and asked them whether they take credit cards, and then I fueled and got the whole chores and got the petrol on my fingers, and it was smelling the whole day and all that kind of trouble. Now, it doesn't work quite like that anymore, because you could be, or some of you could be one of those 600,000 people who are using the Fujitsu developed solution as an implementation and demonstration of both cloud infrastructure, user interface design, which we did with a partner company, the back end, the payment, mobile payment part of it, integrating it into the POS system, point of sale system, using the Fujitsu Enterprise Retail solution for it, and Fujitsu Forecourt Control Center, another Fujitsu package, putting it together to provide a new digital experience for customers, even though the fuel they are getting is not digital, and it still smells. But apart from that fact, it's a different experience, because that integrated system resides as an app on your mobile phone. You drive up to a petrol station like that, and then you will, if you don't see for yourself, the app tells you which pumps are available or will be available soon, and you can select one of those, drive up, but you've got to do the pumping, because that's the analog part of it. There is an analog part of the experience, but you don't need to worry about it. The payment will be done, and that's your experience. And for the company, the payment happens. There is a security of transaction. There is a total security protection involved, and there is a much better and much cheaper way of doing the transaction. And the good news is that with this system, within just a couple of months, we could increase the amount of transaction going through the system fivefold. That's good in about 8 months, I believe. That's good, because the cost of a transaction done like that, it's much safer. It's in the system already. It can be analyzed. It can be planned, and it's much cheaper for the company. So the S Group and ABC are actually profiting here in Finland from Fujitsu's ability to actually deliver digital solution models. I just told you this, so I'm going to jump. Now, one more topic, and I'm sorry I'm out of time now, but there is, as I said, there are no guarantees with me, unfortunately, so bear with me for a few more seconds and answer this question about, are you worried that these kind of solutions, that the one that you saw that have the credit card data and other kinds of data, probably know everything about you? They probably know where you drive, at what point, where do you fill up your your car, and so on. Are you worried that, are there any issues here? Security, finding people with the right skills, or whatever, complexity, or are you totally worry-free in terms of the applications of digital transformation? Respond now, please. Now you are with me. But it's interesting. So I'm happy with everything, and not that it matters, but I'm happy with everything except for this one. I think the problem is bigger than that, because in the initial phases of the digital transformation, digital implementation of digital projects, you don't see the lack of skills that is coming later on. I think that across Europe we have an issue. And the issue is not becoming smaller, it's becoming bigger with skills, and the reason is, and I don't have time for that either today, I know, but I really have a problem with the European educational system. It's too slow. It is pretty clear what kind of skills and what kinds of profiles we need in the future. Our higher education across Europe is too slow to produce that. So I think the skill issue is a bit bigger than it appears if I'm looking at your responses. Now, I know that in the PISA studies, Finland is doing actually very well. So congratulations. See to it that you get more people with the right skills. Now, And I'm going to do this very quickly, so I will be talking to the room monitors to jump a few slides. The last one is the security thing, and I'm going to stay on this slide, and I'm going to tell you only two things. The one is that the security of this digital world is an enormous challenge. And the reason is that with the advent of IoT, the Internet of Things, we are introducing a very large number of devices, billions of them. Currently, there are probably 8 to 10 billion devices, and by the end of the decade, we might actually have almost 20. We don't know. That is much, much larger than what we used to have at the times when only computers and later on phones were on the Internet. The problem is that the very large number gives this whole setup that we have a huge attack surface. And it's because even the dumbest, smallest devices can be actually hijacked and used, for example, for denial of service attacks. A couple of years ago, I talked about this at our forum in Munich in Germany, and half tongue-in-cheek, I was holding up a light bulb and said that this can be used because it has an IP address for denial of service attacks. And people were saying, yes, of course, light bulbs will be used as an army. Yes, that's right. You know what? It took 3 months from there. And the first attack was launched, and the light bulb and the refrigerator were identified as sources of the malicious packets, because their firmware is not updated that frequently. So if there is a vulnerability, it will be used by anybody else. So we have a huge problem to tackle. And if you ask me, I will tell you that if I don't find any other justification for the applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning, that's the one. The threat that we are facing in cyberspace is becoming so large that human intelligence and capability will not be able to deal with it. So if there is only one justification why AI and machine learning is needed and is coming and lots of money is being invested, that's it. That was the one aspect. The other aspect I would like to say is that data protection, because of that, is not just a good idea. Because of this threat, I could tell you that you should maybe do something about it. It is becoming a law. The European community will put a law into effect by the 25th of May next year. That's 13 months away. The General Data Protection Regulation. And it's different from anything else we've seen before. It just doesn't say you should protect yourself. It just doesn't say that you should report if there is anything happening to you, because we need to know so that defense can be built around it. It says you are obliged to do it. And if you don't comply, we're going to hit you. We're going to hit you bad with 20 million euro or 4% of your annual turnover, whichever is bigger. Do the math. And you will see that compliance with that regulation, General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union, is going to be key. Now, for this reason, we have set up an advisory service. We look at your processes. It's a process issue, too. Your processes, your setup, the way you go about it, and help you to become compliant. Otherwise, you will be spending a lot more money than you would think. That's the application of the security and data protection part. Now, can I have the slide with the 4 blocks at the end, please? The overview slide with IoT, AI, and so on, because I'm going to jump all the rest. For some reason today, I can't do time management. It's a diagram with blocks on it. Thank you. So look at this picture, please. it says connected services because this is what has become Fujitsu's methodology or a strategy, what kind of areas we are going to concentrate on. This is stressful for my company because if you look at the current Fujitsu, you would argue that it's not all about this. We have so many other businesses and other activities too, which is true, and we would like you to be customers of those services as well. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is the future, the connected services. And I did talk about AI, and I did talk about IoT. I didn't talk about that much about data and analytics. It was the hospital example, and in the industrial IoT with the Chinese company. I did mention the implications of security that underlies everything that we do, and I did mention the usage of cloud, because take the ABC example in Finland, that's cloud, that's security. They always tend to evolve a number of these key abilities for the future. And that's key. Connected services means these abilities and these strategic directions are connected to each other inside of this diagram and outside in several ecosystems too. That's the way Fujitsu would like to develop into the future so that we can be a better partner for you for digital co-creation and transformation. Can I have now the digital co-creation slide with the many people on it? Because I would like to close with that digital co-creation methodology that I emphasize is so important, where you and I and we as a company can work together to produce a result. And I would like to use and promote this digital co-creation for which we are gearing up here in Finland as well. A number of our people are gearing up to do that so that we can help you. And I can help you as well, so I'm sort of trying to blend into this picture and be one of those who are supporting you as the customer with the ultimate goal that hasn't changed, to build the human-centric, intelligent society. Thank you.